Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown. That will not last. But we do it to get a crown that will last forever. 1 Corinthians 9:25.
Welcome to xGameZones, hub to latest popular games, reviews, preview and news. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics is a fairly entertaining game, and if you're a fan of the turn-based RPG genre or the Dark Crystal, I think you would do well to give it a try. Players who have seen the Netflix series might be able to connect more to the game than I was. As a standalone game, I can only imagine the confusion that could go through a new player's head if they hadn't experienced any of the Dark Crystal franchise. At that point, I think it struggles as a standalone game. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Tactics caters to a specific audience, and essentially translates the story of Age of Resistance to a turn-based RPG. There are no real choices for you to make here, and nothing you can do to affect the outcome. Just sit back, grab your fizzcakes, and enjoy the ride. Let me start off by stating that I have yet to see the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance on Netflix. I grew up watching the Dark Crystal, enamored with its colorful characters, and was so excited to hear the news of a new series about the topic. However, at the time of its release, I was transferring to a new job, and got swept up in the chaos of life. For this review, I am representing the other half of the population who was drawn into the allure of tactics based on our love for the movie and Jim Henson's world as a whole. I am looking at this game and reviewing it based on how it stands up on its own. With that out of the way, let's jump into it. Please subscribe in our YouTube channel and follow and like us on Facebook #xGameZones. Visit our site at www.xgamezones.com for more gaming review. As stated in the introduction, Tactics revolves around the story of the Gelflings and the nefarious Skeksis. This is a story and a premise we are used to. It's like coming home, and places us in familiar territory. Despite the initially unfamiliar characters, the player is introduced to Aura, the mystic, and learns more about the narrative of our main protagonist Ryan through a tutorial dream fasting sequence that serves to introduce us to some of the basic mechanics of the game. The clans of the Gelflings seem to refuse to work together, but you'll have to make them say reason if you want to stand a chance against the Skeksis. Most cinematics and tactics are told through comic-style panels by the incredibly talented Andy Cotnam, who has also worked on other bonus XP titles. This was by far one of my favorite parts of Tactics. The first initial panel that we are introduced to shows a Gelfling being sacrificed to the crystal in order to retain the youth of the Skeksis. And the illustrations that depicted it absolutely stopped my heart. Moving through the various stages of Tactics is pretty intuitive for those who have played turn-based RPGs before. You generally have two actions, your move, and a skill. An added bonus to the stages are vertical platforms. Female Gelflings can easily fly up onto these to gain an advantage on foes beneath you, whereas the males might be a bit slower. Each time you want to make a move or perform a skill, you have to click on the character to bring up the skill wheel. It's also just a little bit bulky and feels kind of in the way. There's a lot of clicking that has to be done to get your character where you feel they should be best situated. The undo movement action is one that I haven't quite seen before in a turn-based RPG, at least not recently. Divinity: Original Sin immediately comes to mind with its skill resource management system. That being said, I still like it. When you do attempt to move, a grid opens up beneath your selected character, showing you where they are eligible to move. After moving, you can undo that movement at absolutely no cost or penalty. Speaking of resource management, Tactics surprisingly trains you to treat your allies that you've recruited during battle as resources themselves. Each campaign stage that you battle through is just a little bit different and makes you think outside the box about how you should accomplish that task. Tactics doesn't necessarily punish you for sacrificing characters for the sake of meeting objectives. In fact, I think in some ways it encourages it. I initially encountered this in the tutorial, and actually didn't even read the objectives because I was so tired. With that in mind, I should have immediately run for the door with 2 of my characters, but instead, I tried to save all of my characters and failed. Upon looking at the objective again, I realized that this wasn't just a regular fight. We were retreating, and sacrifices were going to have to be made in order to succeed. This choice was also reflected in the following comic cinematic, where we saw the outcome of Ryan having to retreat from battle. The characters in Tactics can be customized to further their combat prowess and unlock more abilities to help your team overcome obstacles. Characters have a primary job and a secondary job, each that lets you choose abilities and further develop how you want that particular character to function on the stage. Primary jobs offer 3 abilities for your character initially, with more specializations to choose from as they level up. Secondary jobs are picked up at level 5, and you get to add 2 more additional abilities to your combat options. These abilities aren't set in stone, and can actually be swapped in between missions to let you customize your party to overcome a specific stage. Characters can also be outfitted in equipment and armor that you find throughout the campaign or purchase at the store for pearls. I'm a big fan of how Tactics implemented their job system, and I think it adds a necessary layer of customization that allows you to play the game how you want. Tactics, for the most part, you do not have a valid verification file. Please contact your sales support team to obtain a valid license. It's an extremely linear game and story. We all know that it is going to have a bittersweet end. If you have seen the Dark Crystal movie, even without having seen the Netflix series, it's pretty easy to pick up on that. So while you're just along for the ride, it's nice to be able to add a bit of flair and flavor to how your party fights. Tactics is definitely stylized and looks like it has gone for a more traditional fantasy look rather than sticking to that of the puppets. I think it would have been a neat nod to the series to try to keep the more traditional look over what we received. It had to have been difficult to translate that kind of style to a 3D rendering, so I still give props to the developers for managing to retain the feel of the characters while putting their own twist on their appearance. The world of Thur is extremely vibrant, and the various levels you play on each are different enough to have their own unique look and feel. Something that threw me off guard was the omission of any kind of voice acting in the game. With only the grunts of combat here and there, the missing voice acting was glaringly obvious. The music of Tactics was there, ever present in the background, but it never really seemed to match up with the scenes. At one point in the battle, there was smooth, flowing, atmospheric music that felt better suited to relaxing in town rather than fighting in dungeons. With no voice acting and the music not matching up with the scene, the experience often felt dull for me. In a TV series or movie, the voice acting and music carry a lot of the emotional weight for a scene. With that missing here, I just found myself not connecting as much as I should have to the encounters. If you have any comments or suggestion, feel free to comment below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe in our YouTube channel and follow and like us on Facebook #xGameZones. For more gaming review, visit our site at www.xgamezones.com. Don't forget to click the notification bell.